Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, which is exploring the connection between community action agencies and family resource centers. So excited that you are here today with us. My name is Julie Matusik, and I am before I introduce myself, I actually am really excited to introduce our co-presenters, the Community Action Partnership Organization. And you'll be meeting Denise in just a few moments, but so excited for the opportunity to elevate how community action agencies are working across the country, as well as family resource centers and just the overlap. So looking forward to introducing Denise in just a moment. So I'm Julie, and I am part of the National Family Support Network team. I am our senior manager of membership and events, and a couple just logistical things to mention. If you're joining us online, you can listen directly through your computer speakers. You can choose alternate audio as well, of course. And if you called in via the phone number that's been provided by Zoom, your line has been muted to minimize background noise. And for those of you that are online, you'll want to note that in the chat here in just a moment, you'll see a link to a Dropbox folder. And this is where we have conveniently placed all of the handouts for you in that folder. So feel free to click on that so you can access the handouts throughout the webinar today. And one other important thing to mention as well is that we invite you to put any questions that you may have into the Q&A portion of the Zoom platform. We have the chat function as well for any comments or any excitement that you'd like to share throughout the webinar. But we do ask that you direct all questions that you have to that Q&A section, just so we can make sure we don't lose them. We've set aside special time at the end of the webinar where you can where we'll moderate those questions live. If you have any tech issues at all, we have Katie and Jennifer here with us today. And so if you're having challenges accessing that, the Dropbox link or having audio issues or anything or whatnot, just feel free to private message them in the chat. And we are going to try to get to all of the questions today. But if for some reason we're unable to, if we run out of time, someone from the one of our organizations will follow up with you depending on who the question was for. So one last logistical thing to mention is that today's PowerPoint will be on the Webinar Wednesday page of the NFSN website by this time tomorrow. You'll also see the link to the recording as well as all the handouts will be on there. And when you exit the webinar today, an evaluation will automatically appear on your screen. So we do ask that you take a moment to complete this as it provides us with very valuable feedback to inform future webinars. How this one actually came to be is because folks had asked for it. So really excited and grateful for folks that had raised that as something that would be helpful. So would love to get a sense of who is here today on this webinar. Lots of folks are here. So geographically, let's take a look at this map, and you'll see we have the United States and its territories divided into regions. And Katie's going to launch a poll for us so you can let us know where you're joining us from. There are also options outside of the United States as well on that poll. So whether you're joining from the States or Canada or another international location, it'd be great to hear where you're joining us from. So give you about 10 more seconds to respond if you haven't just yet. And I'm seeing lots of introductions in the chat too. It looks like folks are joining from all across the country. All right. Let's take a look at that poll results and see where everyone's joining us from. Okay, very cool. This looks like we have all regions of the states represented, with our strongest representation being from the West. but other regions represented too, not far behind. That's really great. And welcome to those of you that are joining us from out of the States. So happy that you are here with us today. All right, a couple more questions for you, just to learn a little bit more about who is here today, since we can't go around the virtual room with all hundreds of us that are here today. This next one is about your affiliation. So we're going to launch a poll here. Okay, so let us know in this poll what type of organization you're associated with. So whether a family resource center network, community action agency, other family support programs, maybe your parent leader, early care and education, government, private funder, and of course we have other. And if you put other, feel free to put in the chat what you're up to so we can learn a little bit about what you're doing. All right, take just 3 more seconds to let us know your affiliation. Dive in. Yeah, and some definitely are going to be more than one of those for sure. Yes. Okay, let's see those results. All right. This is really great. I'm seeing lots of community action agencies, lots of family resource centers. We have the network level represented also. Um, we have government, education, and other represented too. So yeah, and I'm seeing in the chat like multiple folks are both FRCs and community action agencies. So apologize that that wasn't an option. It's really great to see that we have that overlap represented. So exciting. Thank you so much for letting us know in the chat. That's really helpful. Yeah, it's really exciting. Okay, last question for you all for now, which is related to your level of organization. So whether you are working at the systems level, maybe the policy level, management, or maybe you're working directly with families at the program level. And of course, we have other as well. So let us know there in the chat. Loving how busy the chat is here, just learning a little bit about what you all are doing and where you're located. So exciting. All right, let's see those results here about the level. Okay, so lots at the management level and at the program direct service level. It looks like we have some policy and systems level as well, and other folks here too. So that's really great. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about what you're up to, and that's really helpful for context as we dive in. So let's take a look. We have some background information for you. And I'll kick off with sharing a little bit about the National Family Support Network, and then really excited to have Denise share more about the Community Action Partnership. So let's see. So the National Family Support Network, we were founded in 2011 by 8 states. And since then, we have more than quadrupled in size, and we have grown to 41 member networks across the country that are representative of more than 3,000 family resource centers that are serving more than 2 million people annually. And so it's really exciting to see this map just changing almost monthly. Iowa is our most recent member that joined in December, and Wyoming also joined recently in September. So really excited to see this map change. The National Family Support Network's mission is to promote positive outcomes for families and children, families, and communities by leveraging the collective impact of state family resource center networks and championing quality family support and strengthening practices and policies. And our vision, in short, is that map that you just saw, that the whole map would be green, ensuring that all families across the country have access to quality family support programs in their very own communities that are supported by strong networks in their state. Here's our roadmap of our time together. We kicked off, of course, with a little NFSN orientation introduction there. want to talk about family resource centers briefly, just in case some of you aren't as familiar. And for those of you that are, it'll be helpful to learn about your cousins across the country, some of the more details around family resource centers. And then we're really excited to hear from Denise at the National Community Action Partnership. And then we have two other programs that are going to be presenting today, and really excited to have the opportunity for you to hear from them. We'll close with some resources and opportunities and that evaluation, of course. So that is what our time will look like together today. So diving in briefly just to talk about family resource centers so you have that context and background information. So family resource centers, thousands of FRCs, as we call them for short, have emerged organically across the country, yet their existence is still largely under the radar, as we sometimes say, America's best kept secret. And so a family resource center definition is that it's a community or school-based welcoming hub of supports and services and opportunities that are designed to support families to be strong and to be successful. And so they may be community-based, like the image that you see on the left here, which is of a family resource center in Vermont, or they may be school-based, like the image that you see on the right in Kentucky. And they also, family resource centers, they may be in rural settings, like the image that you see here on the left, which is in Colorado. And they also exist in urban settings, like the image that you see here on the right, which is of a family resource center in the Bronx in New York City. And so wherever family resource centers are based, FRCs are working with families in an approach that is not only two generational, but multi-generational, strength-based and family-centered. So I want to call out each of these individually because they're each very important. So multi-generational, maybe you've heard of two-generational work or two-gen work. So family support is the original, not just two-gen, but multi-gen work, as programs are working with children and parents and grandparents as well. And they're strengths-based. So this is because we see families as having strengths, and we want to support them to build upon those strengths. And family-centered, because everything we do has families at the center. And they're intentionally designed for all families, so not only low income or highly challenged ones. This way, the support that they're providing is non-stigmatized, making it more readily accessible for everyone. And the programming, it's provided at no cost or low cost for participants. So the image that you see here on the screen is of a family success center in New Jersey, and that's what New Jersey calls their family resource centers. And New Jersey is a really great example that we like to highlight because in New Jersey, there are 57 family success centers across their state's 21 counties. So each county has at least one, and typically more than one family success center. So that includes highly affluent counties as well as highly challenged counties. Because again, the belief is that all families can benefit from access to support for two of the most important roles that we can have as adults, being parents and being spouses or partners. These two roles that we have, we typically receive no support for, right? There's no training, there's no manual. And so hence the value of universal access to family resource centers. And also want to mention too that they are founded in these strengthening families protective factors. So these 5 protective factors come to us from the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and research has shown that these 5 protective factors increase family stability, enhance child development, and reduce the likelihood of child abuse and neglect. So as we're working with families, we want to support them to build these protective factors because we know that they make a positive difference. And on this next slide, want to share this with you too. So as these family resource centers are conveniently located hubs, they bundle and co-locate many services that may already be familiar to you. So things like home visiting, evidence-based parent education, health screenings, play groups, fatherhood programs, family counseling, food banks. Some examples of things that you'll see at family resource centers. In this slide, you'll see the most common service areas. So we talk about how mentioned how a lot of the family resource centers were organically created, yet at the same time, despite their organic development, there is very much remarkable similarity in their most common service areas. And so this data comes to us from a national study that was funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation that the National Family Support Network worked with a research institute to conduct. So you'll see family resource centers, they all look a little different, serving their communities in unique ways based on the needs of their community. And these are the most common that we see across the country. So parenting support exists on a continuum from lighter touch to more intensive services. Same with the access to resources, starting out with enhanced information and referral, and then we actually have those resources being co-located. And then child development activities and parent leadership development are the other two most common service areas. And FRCs, they not only provide programs, but they build communities of peer support for families to develop social connections that reduce isolation and stress, which are highly correlated with child abuse. So important as we are emerging from the pandemic. We really saw family resource centers being able to be highlighted in this very unique way. Okay, so that is a little bit of context about family resource centers. And with that, I am excited to introduce Denise with the National Community Action Partnership, and I'll ask her to share a little bit more about herself and their organization. Thank you so much for being here today, Denise.
Thank you so much, Julie. Really appreciate being here, appreciate the invitation to do this joint webinar. And so thank you to everybody who's on the call here today. I think what you've already heard, those of you on the community action side of the table, boy, a lot of what the FRCs do is a lot of what community action agencies do. And I hope that those of you who are FRCs going to hear, hey, what we do is what community action agencies do. And I know many of you are both. And I think that's really the phenomenal part that we want to elevate both all of our knowledge that a lot of organizations aren't just one thing. We're multiple things in a community. So glad to be here, as well as with two local community action agencies who are also family resource centers. And you're going to hear from Daniela and Jason a little bit later here today. And they're wonderful examples about when family resource centers are embedded within a community action agency, how both kind of missions and purposes really blend and braid together for the betterment of families. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So community action comes to this work with decades up behind us. We were created in 1964 as part of the Economic Opportunity Act. And this quote from Brian Stevenson always sticks with me as really the purpose of community action, because the opposite of poverty isn't wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. And community action is grounded in the fight for social and economic justice. Because only with justice comes equity, comes ability for our community and our country to truly lift all boats, to have all families have the opportunity to thrive. Next slide, please. And I'm going to start off today. I heard Julie talk a little bit about vision. That's a wonderful place, I think, to really look to where networks want to go. If you're part of community action, you know that all of our local agencies, we have 1,000 local community action agencies all over this country. 75% of their nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofits, other 25% of units of local government. They all got different mission statements, they all got different names, but we're all bound together by this promise that community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. That is our mantra in community action. It is broad-reaching, it is hopeful, it's asset-based, strength-based. It is all about, we do care about the entire community. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we were formed 60 years ago. This is the 60th anniversary year of community action and all the programs that were developed as part of the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964. And for many of us, this quote from President Johnson's State of the Union in January of 1964 is what resonates. It is therefore the policy of the United States to eliminate, quote, the paradox of poverty in the midst of plenty in this nation by opening to everyone the opportunity for education and training, the opportunity to work, and the opportunity to live in decency and dignity. I heard that in what FRCs do, and I know that's what CAAs do. We're here to ensure that all of us have the opportunity to thrive. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we are located coast to coast and in the territories. We have community action agencies serving 99% of America's counties. Alongside our 1,000 local agencies, we have state associations. About 46 of them, or give or take, are fully staffed. State associations in individual states. We also have regional associations. So if you're a standalone family resource center or part of the Family Resource Network, I encourage you to interface with your state association, with your colleague community action agencies. We reach in deeply into community. We are person-centered, family-centered in our work, just like FRCs. And it was great to hear the multi-generational. We too tend not to use the term two-gen. We can talk two-gen. We believe in the two-gen framework of all the different wheels and pieces that go into that, but we call it the whole family approach because I think everyone on this call here today can agree families living with low incomes and who are struggling, it's not always just two-gen, right? It's all gen, it's multi-gen, it's whole family. And we're going to talk a bit more about that here today. But we're on all sides of the aisle and every part of the community, and it's so glad to be here with our colleagues here today. Next slide, please. So community action agencies, what do we do? In general, we connect individuals and families to approaches that help them succeed. We ensure that families decide for themselves what success means for them. This is not a top-down. Now, our programs oftentimes top-down, funding streams top-down, yes. What a community action agency's job is, and oftentimes FRCs, right, is to figure out what programs and services and money comes in and how do we serve the family. We hope that for families, all those funnels and silos are invisible. We know that's quite not where we are as a country in terms of how we serve families who are struggling, but it truly is about what matters to that family. Second, community level work. We promote community and system-wide solutions to seemingly stubborn, quote, wicked challenges. I love the poll included. How many of you, when you're in systems change work? I'm a social worker, right? Got into this work because I believe you have to go upstream if you're going to interrupt the challenges, the structural racism, the policy making that is counter to the benefit of families. We have to go upstream. We have to change systems. We have to barrier block or bust, I guess, right? To get rid of those barriers so families can access programs and services. And three, we share expertise with national, state, local leaders, and others who are looking for solutions. People can talk about, we want to fund what works. Well, if FRCs and CAAs, you invite us to the table, we'll tell you what works, right? We understand how families navigate our systems. We understand how families hit up against brick walls or cliff effects or age barriers or transportation barriers, childcare barriers. We understand. And so we're not afraid, right, to share that expertise with policymakers. Oftentimes we have to be political animals in the lowercase p, right, where we have to advocate. We have to go upstream. And that's what community action does every day. Next slide, please. So again, we are grounded in that rich history of social and economic justice. We have a national infrastructure through the 1964 Economic Opportunity Act. We're one of the few networks, right, designated by the president to fight poverty, no matter where we find it, in every corner of America. It's a right and a privilege to be able to do this work in community action. And to have that mandate to fight poverty is overwhelming. It's a blessing. But again, it's not one singular program. And that's part of the challenge, right? Of how do you find the right bundle of services that a family needs? How do you find the right funding streams? They're able to tear down all the small artificial barriers that prevent access to those programs to ensure families can thrive. We'll talk a little bit about that we engage the community at all levels, specifically through what we call the tripartite board of directors. Our governing boards, the nonprofit boards, as well as the public advisory committees, right? 1/3 of the board are elected officials, because elected officials have a role to play in fighting poverty. 1/3 are from the private sector, and at least 1/3 are democratically selected individuals from low-income communities, at least 1/3. It can be more than that, but that ensures that people who are experiencing poverty or people who have experienced our programs are the experts, and we put them in a true governance role in our organizations. And we may be a 5, 10, 20, 50, $150 million organization. All those organizations have people selected in that tripartite structure. We are required to do needs assessments every 3 years. By statute, we have to assess local community needs as well as local community resources. Things shift, ebb and flow. The pandemic, we had to do needs assessment pretty quick to figure out where the challenges were and pivot our programs to meet that need. That's what community action does every day. And finally, what gives us our designation is something called the Community Services Block Grant. It flows out of the Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families, Office of Community Services. It's a small pot of money in the scheme of things. It's $700 million, which is a lot of money, don't get me wrong. But when you divide it up amongst 1,000 agencies, it doesn't end up being a lot of money. But we leverage that to bring in another $14 billion every year in a typical year to serve families. This network is substantial. Next slide, please. We provide a range of services. Again, it depends. We talked a little bit already about the whole family 2-gen approach. I'm going to put a few things into the chat a little bit later, some tools and resources, so you can see the kind of 2-gen whole family work that we're doing. We do a lot of emergency assistance. We are building affordable housing. We provide healthcare in many settings. About 24 community action agencies are also federally qualified health centers. Just like our bunch are family resource centers, we have another bunch that are FQHCs. We have another bunch that have different subsets as well, because community action agencies sometimes are the only option in local communities. We oftentimes people know us because of Head Start, early childhood education programs, job training, senior services, weatherization, case management, family coaching, all sorts of good stuff going on in community action. Next slide, please. Our national theory of change works toward achieving these 3 national goals: that individuals and families that are with low incomes are stable and achieve economic security. That number 2, that communities where low income people live are healthy and offer economic opportunity. Again, family, community, and then people with low incomes are engaged and active in building opportunities. Maximum feasible participation. That's another hallmark term for community action. Maximum feasible participation. And what I know about FRCs, about family involvement, we align like this. We are cousins, brothers, sisters, siblings. We work together so well because we believe that families are the best determinants of their own direction. Next slide, please. As part of our theory of change, we offer, as I mentioned, a range of services and strategies. We believe certain things about poverty. It's complex, it's incredibly localized, and we believe in strong performance management. We have organizational standards that every community action agency must meet, whether they're public or private. We collect national performance indicators on how we're doing, what outcomes are we achieving as an organization, and then as a network. We have to produce that report, and that information gets sent to Congress. It gets sent to the president's desk about what do we do as a national network. And again, it's built on that firm foundation of local agencies, state associations, and we are supported also by state organizations through the state government called State Community Services Block Grant offices and state weatherization offices. So a lot of complexity there, but just to give you the sense that this is a thoughtful, mature network. Next slide, please. I mentioned our accountability framework. We embrace accountability. We embrace performance metrics. We are held to a very high standard as federal grantees, sub-grantees, right? We have audits, we have organizational standards, and we must perform under this results-oriented management and accountability framework. We are required to assess We are required to do strategic planning and program planning. We are required to collect certain metrics and certain data that we then are required to analyze, navigate, reflect upon, modify our programs in reflection to, and report that and analyze and start the whole cycle over. Community action agencies are highly accountable. When you run into them, they may be, I have another monitor on site. That's because we're oftentimes having to ensure the funders and others that we know our business, we're doing what's right, and we're performing in a way that is meaningful. Next slide, please. I know this is a lot to throw at y'all too. Just a couple of more items. A framing that I want to make sure you sticks with you today that community action truly embraces, and this comes from our work with the Kresge Foundation. Again, social and economic mobility. A few years ago, the Gates Foundation did a mobility from poverty initiative, and they looked at the things that prevent mobility from poverty. And this concept, again, of the social and economic, again, the opposite of poverty isn't wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. People have a right and need to feel connected in their community, to feel empowered in their community, in addition to having resources, having safe and affordable housing, saving safe and affordable drinking water, to have utilities, to have education, to have childcare, to have healthcare. We have to work on both sides of this equation to ensure that all families thrive. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we work hard in community action to accelerate the social and economic mobility, and we do this through the whole family approach. Julie earlier mentioned the multi-generational approach. We are all in on that. We have to ensure that children have access to the early childhood education that they're able to get. They're able to get healthy food, WIC, right, SNAP, all those benefits that come into the household to ensure a child can be healthy. We also then need to ensure that the parents and the guardians and others who are caring for children have access to job training, all to the benefits that need to come into the household, senior services, again, SNAP, utility assistance, all the public benefits, as well as access to pathways to help them succeed. So a ton of information. Again, there's going to be more information in the Dropbox, and I'll be putting some information into the chat as well, so you can learn more about our whole family approach. Next slide, please. And finally, our two networks, as I mentioned throughout, have a lot of similarities. There's probably more that we haven't even touched on here today. And those of you who are both organizations, you truly understand how our two networks work together. And I'm excited today that we're going to have a couple of our colleagues be able to share that story with you. Next slide, please. And Julie, do I turn this back over to you? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that works. I'm happy to jump in with a little bit of this and welcome you to pop back in just a moment, of course, too. So kicking off, that now that you've heard about family resource centers and about community action agencies, just want to call out, and Denise was definitely doing it a bit too as she was going through, which was really helpful. Just want to call out some of the commonalities here. So some community action agencies have family resource centers as part of their strategy of serving the community. And some of them, some community action agencies are one and the same with family resource centers, such as some of you that are on today, which is so great that you're able to be here today. And some community action agencies and family resource centers complement each other's services and cross-refer to each other. I know in my very own community that happens every single day, and it's so important to advancing the work for families. And Denise, feel free to jump in if you have any more to add about any of these slides too. Just want to call out briefly some of these key pieces. And as you have heard, there's a common approach between family resource centers and community action agencies. Both are community based, and family resource centers also may be school based, but many are community based, and how they evolve, how they grow is largely dictated by the community and family centered. They're centered around the families in that community and wanting to serve them as their top priority. And looking at the core services of family resource centers and community action agencies, we see overlapping areas here that you see on the slide. So early childhood programs and a focus on community well-being and wanting to improving family life, both of them having that as their goal and as their focus in the work that they're doing. And also another core service to call out is the involvement in the economic support and development activities, just that that is definitely a focus of both in advancing that area. And then just a couple key distinctions. I'll mention a couple just to call out, and hearing from Denise and all about community action agencies as a refresher, just so great. A couple things to mention with family resource centers. The number of programs, there's some variation. There's over 3,000 family resource centers that we know of. And so some of them still are kind of under the radar. And they're all based on the community needs. So there's no geographic parameters on where FRCs can be located. And some FRCs are, I don't know if anybody is on today from a school-based family resource center. Kentucky, for example, has 888 school-based FRCs. All of theirs are school-based, and it's a unique opportunity to work in the school settings that work being done by family resource center programs. So that was a couple that I wanted to mention. Denise, any other distinctions that you want to call out?
Well, and I did mention briefly that about 250 community action agencies are units of local government, which is a bit of a different animal as well. But some of those units of local government act like nonprofit community action agencies. But I think of Metro Action in Nashville, a fantastic public CAP agency, does so much great work, and but it is a unit of local government. Same thing with CAP Riverside in California. It's part of county government, but it acts and behaves and brings together resources and the energy like a nonprofit would. So you'll find community action agencies all over the place, and a lot of CAPs will have multiple sites. We have agencies that serve tens of thousands of square miles, if not more than that. So our agencies will have many sites, even if it's one lead community action agency.
Really, really great to learn about the differences and just the overlap for sure. And with that, I'm going to put up, and Denise, feel free to jump in with any other words. Thank you so much for sharing about community action agencies.
No, I really appreciate it. And if folks have comments or questions, I'll put some stuff in the chat. I see Michelle shout out in the chat too. Good to see you, Michelle. There's always information. Our stuff is available to everybody who works to fight the causes and conditions of poverty. You do not have to be just a CAP agency to use our toolkits, to attend our webinars, to come to our conferences. Do we have member and non-member rates? Yes, we do. But everything that we do here is in service to families. So please, if there's something here that is of interest to you and you're not a CAP agency, reach out to us. We're happy to share it, that sort of thing, anytime. So. And then I think our next slide is we're turning it over to our first of two community action agencies are going to be presenting today. Neither one, as you can see, have the word community action in their title, right? That's not atypical of community action agencies. And I'm really excited that El Centro de la Raza, Daniela, is going to be with us here today. As you know, our conference this coming August is in Seattle, which is home to 5 different community action agencies, I want to say, in the city proper in Seattle. And El Centro is just such a fantastic, I've been on site, I've seen the agency. It is just a wonderful example of community action. So Daniela, thank you so much for being a representative of a CAP who's also an FRC, and I'm going to turn this over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Denise, and wonderful presentation. So good day, everyone. My name is Daniela Lizarraga. I am a Navigators Manager at El Centro de la Raza, which means the Center for People of All Races. I'm honored to share space with so many incredible individuals throughout our nation who make such a difference in our community. A special thanks to Brenda with National Family Support Network for inviting our organization, and appreciate your assistance, Julie, with the presentation. So wonderful. Here is our beloved historic building in the middle of Seattle, Washington. The building was an abandoned elementary school when a few of our founders began to occupy the building in 1972. During that time, there weren't many services for Latinos, so they used it as a space to provide English classes, provide food to families in need. Wonderful. Next slide, Julie, please. These are our wonderful, colorful murals. These murals are seen throughout the building, inside and out. It's a beautiful and bright space. The murals depict powerful statements about solidarity amongst the workers of the world, including men and women of all races. They highlight the Chicano community and immigrant struggle. The artwork is by several different Chicano and Central American artists, some of who were the original occupiers of El Centro. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this is a fun collage of one of our biggest events called Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead, one of our biggest celebrations of the year. It's a time to honor those, to honor the lives of those who have passed, including social justice heroes, victims of police brutality, hate crimes, and gun violence. We invite the community to share photos of their loved ones who have passed, including fur babies. We post throughout the altars and that are in the hallways. So there's an image there of one of the altars in our hallways, and it's completely, our whole building is covered during this time. We have live music, we have food, and an exhibit of the altars. Last year, we did serve over 1,000 plates of mole, a Mexican dish, and over 2,000 attendees with traditional Mexican hot chocolate. Thank you. We provide 43 programs and services to the community. Throughout Washington, there are various departments that you see on the left-hand side: Human and Emergency Services, Child and Youth Programs, Education and Asset Building, and Housing and Economic Development. Our two biggest programs are our Senior Wellness Center and our Food Bank. Our Senior Wellness Center, we provide a hot meal daily in addition to other activities and programming for individuals ages 55 plus on a daily basis, and provide space for 150 seniors to be in community with each other. We have a food bank that is open to the community and is a grocery style, so they could choose what they'd like. Last year, we served close to 24,000 community members through our food bank. All our services are completely free. Some other services that we do provide, ESL classes. We have a legal clinic where we're collaborating with the Latino Bar Association of Washington. They provide free consultation once a month at our campus. We also host a tax prep clinic, which we collaborated with United Way to provide those services. Those are some pretty popular services, those three. We have several child development centers all throughout Seattle. Our Business Opportunity Center provides financial empowerment to the community and has a wonderful program on how to build your own business, as well as Latinos in business. Next slide, please. So just to continue, we do work to address systemic issues of race, poverty, immigration, affordable housing, education, and other social justice, social injustices. El Centro de la Raza amplifies the voices of those who have been historically silenced to raise awareness and to challenge oppressive structures and policies. One example is Latino Legislative Day, where thousands of Latinos advocate for their community in Olympia. we take, and there's a picture on the right-hand side, we take our youth from our various youth programs and have them actually speak to legislators in person about their community needs. And we take part in this annual march. Next slide, please. So this is our navigation team. That's actually a picture when I was a navigator a few years ago with a community member, and I was helping her with her resume, and she actually, came to me as a newly arrived immigrant in the country, and she actually now works. She worked for El Centro de la Raza, so that was wonderful. But this is the team I manage, is a navigation team, which includes our receptionists. We have two main locations in Seattle, in King County. One is in Seattle, and one is in Federal Way, which is South King County, which is where a lot of our families that we serve live within the South King County area. Just in January of this year, our Federal Way receptionist handled almost 700 calls, a majority of which from our Spanish-speaking community, as well as undocumented. And of course, several other nonprofits and several other partner organizations who contact us, also seeking assistance for their Spanish-speaking families. Our navigators aid the community in guiding and educating them on various complex systems and provide workshops to empower their family. It's of extreme value to be part of the Community Action Agency network and services provided so that we could learn about resources, techniques, and programming, especially from other agencies, so that we're able to evaluate and implement within our community. And we're constantly having to be creative on how to get resources to our families and how to keep them engaged. So it's the inspiration that we receive and the knowledge from other family resource centers, as well as the webinar Wednesdays, is of extreme value and purpose for our team so that we're able to pass down to our families. We're currently exploring more seamless methods for disseminating information to hundreds of families that we serve, as many of them don't frequently check their emails. So I'm eager to learn from others as well in the network about strategies for effectively reaching out to families. Next slide, please. So this is one of our success stories from our families. And we'll go ahead and say Franklin. We changed the name, but Franklin had heard about El Centro services through a friend and came in as a walk-in to our Seattle office. Word of mouth is how most of our community hears about our services. We explain the various systems and institutions in the US that he would need to explore as a new arrival. We assisted with obtaining an ITIN, enrolling his son into preschool, explained housing, employment for people without a social security, which he soon obtained, and provided an overview of all of El Centro's programs as well as our partner organizations. His wife, right here that's featured, she was in a pretty deep depression when they came in as a walk-in, since they had been homeless for the last 9 months. So we provided some essential toiletries that I always like to keep in my office, and connected his wife to counseling services. They've been in constant contact. I was actually the initial person to assist them. Been in constant contact with me. They received zoo tickets through our partnership with our local zoo. And the family did advise that they had never been to the zoo, even in their home country of Nicaragua, and that they never thought that they would have the privilege to go to a zoo and have that luxury of doing fun activities. So that was a picture of them going to the zoo. The goal of our programs are to really educate, empower, and promote self-sufficiency amongst our community. This family is just one example of that success. And through our work with the immigrant community, word spreads about the help that we provide. We even get contacted from people in their home countries, a lot of which are from Central and South America, many of who have heard of our organization and would like guidance even before entering the country. Next slide, please, Julie. This is our Parent Child Plus program, which provides personalized early education guidance in the family's home. They receive free books and toys and are connected with community resources. So this is through our early learning home visiting department. And I was shared a success story, so I'll go ahead and share that with you all. Our home visitor, Daniela, also, she's featured in that photo on that left, that upper left. It was the summer of 2023 when I was doing outreach at the Beacon Hill Park, where I met a mom with 3 girls and was 8 months pregnant. We started talking. I told her about the Parent Child Plus program. She liked the program. We exchanged numbers. Time went by. She didn't call. So I decided to follow up. She told me that she hadn't reached out because she didn't know how to use technology. I told her not to worry and that I could help her. She was showing a little stress because of this, but I encouraged her to sign up, and she did. 4 months had passed. We had a lot of success. We were able to form a trusting relationship. I noticed that it was a little difficult for her to have someone unknown in her home. And the first visit was done at the entrance of the home. Later, she shared that it was the first time that they had visitors ever at their home. And after a few visits, she invited her in, the home visitor, Daniela, and told her that the child was very excited and that she knew to expect me and that they were both enjoying the program. So that was a success story. And a lot of the times we do have a lot of our community members who are not familiar with technology, that trust issue. So really building that trust is of utmost importance throughout our programs. Next slide, please. Wonderful. So this is same department, early learning home visiting department. This is our Parents as Teachers program. Provides free support for families with kids under the age of 3 and provides individualized advice and family support. Next slide, please. This is our Plaza Roberto Maestas is the name of our affordable housing. There that is on our in the Seattle campus, there at El Centro La Raza historic building. You can kind of see it in the background. The colorful building is our affordable housing. And the one in the background is our resource center. So we do have 112 units of affordable housing. And it is named after our main founder, Roberto Maestas. We also have a family navigator who is solely for a navigator for our tenants to provide them with resource, guidance, workshops, and connects them with various activities. We also have a development center. We have a cultural center where a lot of meetings are hosted. A lot of our legal clinic, different large events, we have that space underneath that affordable housing. Next slide, please. We are opening up another center in Seattle's Columbia City neighborhood, and it will be called the Four Amigos. There will also be an early child development center, 87 units of affordable housing, office space for our partners at Consejo Counseling, and a worship space for Church of Hope. So we're really excited for this project. As you all could imagine, we already have a very long interest list, and we have more affordable housing projects in the works. Next slide, please. Wonderful, you all. I appreciate every one of you and your time and attention. Thank you so much. And here's my contact information. Wonderful. So I will go ahead and pass it along to our next presenter, Jason with Open Doors, Utah.
Thank you, Daniela. I think that we need more murals in our building. What a beautiful place for you to work. So that was great. Thank you. Appreciate the work you're doing there. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here and present a little bit about Open Doors. One of the things that I was asked to focus on was to really highlight how we combine the menu of FRC services with our CAA services and requirements so that we holistically meet the needs of families. And so really to talk about the benefit of being closely connected and part of both national networks and both missions is really what I want to talk about. So I'll start with that. This here is just quickly our mission statement uh, of Open Doors: to empower families and individuals to overcome abuse and poverty and to attain self-reliance. And that includes emotional self-reliance and resiliency, as well as economic self-reliance. So just I want to just bring up a couple things here about some of the primary benefits of being both organizations combined in one. Uh, while that does have its challenging with two different sets of standards from each organization that we try to meet, and they don't always overlap perfectly, and with twice as many monitoring visits, and things like that, there's still so many things that are super beneficial. The first is the ability to leverage, really to leverage community action funding for new program initiatives and community priorities. As we go through some of the slides and you kind of see the main groupings of the programs that we operate, I'll have a few stories about how that wasn't always how we operated, right? We some of these new programs came about specifically because of the community needs assessment that Denise mentioned that showed a drastic need in our community to start something new. And so we were able to leverage the community action funding to start those at the beginning, and then over time grow those and grow the funding for those so that we don't need to continually use our community action funding to support that. And then we can move on to the next initiative. The second, I think, great benefit of being connected together is that it allows us to do all that wraparound services in-house, in the same building, in the same organization, and that's so beneficial. You all know this, you've seen this 1,000 times, that as you give referrals to people and they accept that referral and you hope they follow through and they don't. One time I was sitting in my car in front of our building and I saw one of our staff members walk out of the building with a client, and our office is actually right. We share a parking lot almost with the Department of Workforce Services and Child and Family Services. And I knew this caseworker that was on our staff was working with this family, and she came out. She kind of walked to the end of our property and just kind of motioned and pointed towards the building of Department of Workforce Services where she could go to sign up for benefits. And I was on the phone in my car, so I was just kind of watching this. And as I watched the lady, as the staff member walked back in the house, she looked around the corner and looked at Department of Workforce Services, and she turned and she looked down the street to where her car was parked, and she looked back around, and she took one step in that direction and then turned around and got in her car and drive off. And as soon as I finished my phone call, I ran inside to find out what happened. And she said, yeah, I gave her this great referral to go over and talk to this person who we know. And I said, did you know she like drove away in her car? And she just didn't. So we instituted a policy right then, say, look, guys, just walk across the parking lot with them and introduce them to the person you want to meet with. But we actually don't have to do that since we share all this, so many services inside our own property, which is really helpful. I think the other benefit of being part of both is, as um, Julie and Denise spoke about the commonalities. One of the best things I think about both networks, both organizations, is that they really embrace community level work. And not just that, but we're able to rapidly respond to emerging community concerns and emerging community needs. So those missions really align so well. And being both makes it so that we can kind of do that both on this economic issue for poverty and social justice. But then we can also, even the, right, and it's under this whole umbrella, community action cares about the whole community and wants to lift the whole community, and does the work to do that. Um, some of our family support programs, uh, compared to our community action programs. Those community action programs definitely have some poverty guidelines that have to be followed. And so there's some of this great flexibility in the community action, or sorry, in the family support and family resource sector, that we don't even have to ask people how much money they make. We don't have to get documentation of that. And so it kind of makes it easier to actually be both, to give us a broader menu of who we can serve in the community. So if we'll go to the next slide, please. So I was really interested in the slide that Julie showed that had Family Resource Center in the middle with all the services all around it. Community action is very similar, I think, in terms of if we did a slide, maybe it would be more of an umbrella, and everything that happens in community action falls under the umbrella too. So this is a little bit of an artificial division, simply because right, there's so much overarching stuff, and community action can help with all of these, and family support can impact and intersect with all of these things. So just for simplicity's sake, I divided this up into our 4 major programs that are kind of individually funded at this point. So we've got Family Support Center, Community Action, our Circles self-sufficiency program, which is really an intensive self-sufficiency program, and then homeless services. If we can go to the next slide. The next slide talks about the menu of options and services that are actually provided in each. This isn't everything we do, but it kind of gives the larger overview of the main things that we do. And so as I go into a couple of stories, again, what I want to highlight is how we combine the menu of family resource services and community action services to holistically meet the needs of families. So just essentially in the family support quadrant over here, you'll see that it's really about nurturing the families. In the state of Utah, there are several family resource centers, family support centers, with the common thing that we all have is a respite and crisis nursery where parents can come and drop off their kids in a safe place. We can keep them for several hours while parents take care of whatever business they want to. It looks like we're serving kids all day, but really what we're doing is serving parents and helping parents with their stresses, with the things that they need to do, and taking care of business. So we'll serve people in our respite nurseries for everything like a mom who works the night shift And so she can use our crisis respite. She can schedule it once a week so she can come and drop off her kids and she can go home and take a nap, right? It's only daytime sleep that she gets without having to worry about her kids. We've opened our nursery. We've had people come to our nursery from the Air Force Base that's nearby when the spouse is deployed and mom's having a baby and her mom or her mother-in-law is in Florida and can't get here for another day or two. And so we can actually watch the kids or even keep the kids overnight while she goes to the hospital to give birth. Um, and then there's also, right, the unfortunately the dark side when there's child abuse or domestic violence, we can help with child care and taking care of kids in those situations also. So that's our family support sector. If we look at community action, really in community action, we're working with self-sufficiency. We do case management. It's not super intensive in terms of what we require of families compared to our circles self-sufficiency program. I'll talk about that in just a second. But we also provide a lot of emergency assistance and our food bank is connected to that. So here's where that first benefit that I mentioned of being a community action agency really comes into play is that uh, about 12 years ago, um, as we did our community needs assessment, homelessness emerged as a priority, and not just homelessness, but a really particular subset of homelessness where nobody was providing services to this group. So we were able to leverage our community action funds to start a program. At the time, it was a transitional housing program. Now it's moved on to rapid rehousing. Pretty much the same thing. It's more short term housing for homeless people who are at a place where they're ready to work, um, ready to change their lives, and really kind of on the cusp of getting out of homelessness altogether. Thank heaven for community action funding because that was the base funding that we used to do that. And we utilized community action funding for a couple of years, but now we don't use a dime of community action funding to support our homeless services. And then we can do our street outreach and find people. We can put people in shelter care for emergencies in hotels or motels. And then we can actually get families into our rapid rehousing program. Um, it's a little bit, it's not a site-based program. In rapid rehousing, the type that we do, it's where families have the autonomy to find a place where they want to live in the community. We pay the first couple of months rent and their deposit, and then we pay a less portion as they get a job and their employment goes up and they take over an increasing percentage. And then so our successful exits from this program is as soon as people can take over their own rent moving forward. So this last quadrant I want to talk about is our Circles self-sufficiency program. Circles requires weekly involvement from families to come and participate in a group experience where we learn together about moving out of poverty, supporting each other. They get ongoing support in terms of an ally who meets with them weekly. And then we also try to address social issues. We're working multi-generationally here too, in that we have both children and youth education that as we are meeting with the parents to talk about budgeting and increasing income and improving education, that the kids are going through the same thing. And we've had some really great things where, for example, we've told youth or kids when we're talking about budgeting, like your parents' resources are limited. So when you go to the store, don't ask for every piece of candy that you see and every toy that you want. That it's got to fit in the budget. And then we've had stories of people coming back and saying, "Yeah, we went to the store, and for the first time, my kids didn't ask to buy stuff." Uh, so that's a really great outcome for that. If we can go to the next slide. Oh, okay. So we did the same thing with the Circles program as we did with that homelessness issue. Is that in our community needs assessment through community action, we learned that there was this need for more intensive self-sufficiency services. And so we did some research and we found the Circles USA program, and we used our community action funding to respond to that need. And at this point, we're not using community action funding anymore. So again, just going back to that benefit of being able to leverage community action and the community needs assessment for a rapid response to emerging community concerns has been really beneficial to us. So I want to just chat for a minute about this client. This is my friend Tosh. Um, so during the COVID-19 pandemic, she lost her job and was receiving rent assistance for several months, and community action agencies were doing a lot of the rent assistance during COVID. So after the rent relief programs ended at the pandemic, she hadn't been able to find employment. So with her kid, she moved into her car um, as soon as the rent assistance ended. But because she'd been participating in our program for that long, she trusted us and reached out for help. And as soon as we knew she was living in her car, um, we got her involved in our rapid rehousing program. We were able to put her in a hotel or motel for a few days, for a week almost, as she was trying to get into a place. And because we were able to provide the first and last month's rent and promise a couple of months of 100 paying 100% of her rent, she was able to get into a place. So at that point, she knew she needed to find work, and she'd been employed before, just had a rough time during the pandemic and afterwards. So we were able to watch her child in the nursery as she searched for jobs and had job interviews. And so our family support program, right, our family resource intersected with our housing and homelessness program at that point. Um, so once she got a job and she was progressing towards her goals in our program, she was able to access even additional services. Um, so for people who are doing the work at our agency, we've decided to kind of structure some of the extra assistance that we can give so that people can access more as they're making legitimate steps towards self-sufficiency. So we've got our food bank, and people can use our food bank once or twice a month. But people who are making really good progress and have some goals to like pay down debt or get into school or really kind of move towards better jobs, we can actually let them come more often to the food bank. Uh, Not so they can just get more food, but that actually supplements their income, right? They don't have to go to the grocery store now any week except to get the essentials that we don't have. But then they can use that money and apply it towards debt or put it towards some schooling or other things like that. So she was able, because she was moving down the line, she was able to access additional goods and resources and services from us that really helped stabilize her situation further. And once she was in a fairly stable situation, she joined our Circles self-sufficiency program. So she's somebody who accessed all four of the pieces of our quadrant there, all four pieces of the pie, right? She was homeless. We helped her there. We helped her with basic self-sufficiency and some emergency assistance. She's in the community action piece. She's used our nursery for watching her kids. So she's in our family resource centerpiece. And now she's in our Circle self-sufficiency program. So she's kept her job for 6 months. She's now able to pay 100% of her rent. And she's working in our circles continually to improve her employability and self-sufficiency through continuing in that program. So most people don't use all four of our services. And actually, most people come to us with the idea that they just need one thing, right? That they just come for the food bank or they just come for the nursery. But the great thing about, again, being both organizations smushed together is that as they trust us, they'll believe us once we say, hey, we've also got this that we can offer you. We've also have that. Would you be interested in these other programs? So again, man, really just to join both organizations together. And we're fortunate that we actually are both organizations in one. The slide that we looked at earlier that showed um, different alternatives, right? That we're working together. Um, if we're not a community action agency and a family resource center in one, I really encourage that dialogue with between those of you who are just community action agencies and those of you who are just family resource centers. There's so much benefit in that overlap. There's so much benefit, so many things that families need that go beyond what we offer. So we go to the next slide. I think I've got some outcomes here. Not going to go over all of these, but if you look at our housing, our homelessness services, we've got almost 70% of our families that successfully exit. And that means they're able to take on their own rent and mortgage between 6 and 9 months of being in our program. In our Circles program, 100% of people who stay in our Circles program increase their income. Um, uh, and then you can see in our nursery or our family support quadrant that these are last year's statistics. This year is even higher. That the parents who are using our nursery and using our family resources are that many of them, and we get 100% response rate from them, because when they come to pick up their kids and they sign out, before they sign out their kids, it's just 2 questions pop up on the iPad where they answer those 2 questions. And so out of all the parents we're serving, these are the percentages. So it's really, really awesome for us here. All right, next slide. So this shows the percentage of people, 78% of the people that we're serving that receive more than one service, so that they're actually crossing into other ones of those quadrants. I didn't do a percentage on how many are using all four. That one's pretty low, but um, I think where it really fits well is that even though, right, our family resource center has no income requirement, from client self-report that we've asked, 84% of them are low income. That means almost everybody that we're seeing in the nursery qualifies for help with our community action programs. And so it's not like we're just shooting in the dark and hoping that somebody might need something else that we offer in community action, but they're actually 84% actually fit all the criteria for all of the services that we offer. That's a picture of our real food bank. So here's a couple other pictures just to show you to finish up. This is our staff and volunteers in the middle working at our food bank warehouse. And then we've got some pictures of our nursery. And I want to close with one story about our nursery. So like I said, I wish we had a great big mural of that painting of the ocean on that wall. Maybe that's my dream, my next dream. But this is what we call a comfort corner, which is uh, when we're watching kids in our nursery, this is a place where they can go to calm down. One of the things we try to do is we try to check in with the kids when they come and see how they're feeling today. And hopefully everybody's on a red, yellow, green. Hopefully most of the kids are green most of the time, but occasionally they're red or yellow and not feeling well. This is a place where they can go to kind of disengage from the rest of the activities going on in the nursery and just calm down. We've got this bottom right picture that has like a plastic piece of wood with a handprint on it that actually changes colors and responds to breathing rate and stress rates and stuff. So little kids can put their hand in that handprint there and just think and watch the colors go down until they're calmed down. And we've had kids that really struggle, and we've had kids that seem to have not very many problems at all. But we had this girl who was, she had to be 7 years old, who really needed to use the comfort corner frequently. just because of the agitations and stresses and challenges that she had in her life. And one day, it was the cutest thing. There was another kid who was kind of out of control. And the 7-year-old girl went up to this 9-year-old and said, I think you need to use the comfort corner. And she walked that kid over there and kind of showed him how to use it. And it was just, you know, this girl starting to see her own self-regulation abilities and to know what she could do to calm herself down was really remarkable for us. So there might be one more slide. That's just the end. We're done. Grateful for the opportunity to present about what we're doing, and again to talk about the benefits and the combined menu of services that we have at Open Doors. I will turn the time back to Julie.
Thank you so much, Jason, and thank you to Daniela and Denise as well. We want to, I know there's been lots of questions. Thank you for entering those into the Q&A portion of the Zoom webinar platform. So if you haven't already and you have questions, make sure you enter those into the Q&A. I know sometimes they get lost in the chat and I don't want to miss any. So want to start with our questions, and I know some of these will be for myself, Denise, and Daniela and Jason. So we'll all be popping on here so we can direct them to the right person. There is a question for Daniela, which is how long do households typically stay there? And what are the sources of funds that have been used to support the wide range of programs and services?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. So we do have in our early learning home visiting department some programs that are 2 years, 2 years for families. But mostly our programs are on a need basis. So we could have families call us, come in to the office and speak to us once, twice as needed, or we could have families throughout the years if they're still in the city work with us. So that one does vary. And then regarding funding, we receive grants and funding from federal, state, county, our local cities within the county. So we have various different avenues of funding. I personally and other managers and directors, I'm on about 7 to 8 different grants. So we are constantly looking for those opportunities. We have an amazing grant writer. So a variety of funding sources.
Thanks, Daniela. There is a question for, let's see here. This one's for Jason about how are you collecting the outcomes?
Okay, for the nursery outcomes, we have I think I mentioned we just have a little iPad that is as soon as parents come to check out their kids, we hand them the iPad. It's got the 2 questions. Did the block of time that you had um, your kids in the nursery, is your stress increased or decreased? And then the other question is, does using the nursery improve your family relations? And so the parents just self-report in that very moment after they're there to pick up their kids, yes or no. So that's where those percentages come from. The other ones for, wow, we've got a pretty robust tracking for most of our community action contracts and a big database that we use. And so we're actually tracking the um, actual income from people to continue being in the program. And of course, we know as soon as people can take over their own leases or their own rent payments, because they don't ask us for that anymore. I hope that answers the question there.
And I'm on mute. Okay, there we go. There's a question coming from a family resource center and wanting to coordinate better in their community. Don't we all, right? So this one, Denise, would be a great question for you, which is how can they become a community action partner?
None of us do this work alone, and it's great that an organization wants to partner with their local community action agency. If you're not familiar with your local community action agency, Google is amazing, but we also have a search tool up on our website, Find Your Local CAA. We're happy to make an introduction if that's ever helpful. Oftentimes an outreach to the executive director or family development director or some other level programmatic director, our folks are usually more than happy to grab a cup of coffee or do a Zoom chat or something like that. And a lot of communities have human service collaboration councils and things like that too. That could be also an excellent place to meet up and introduce one another. But if you have trouble finding them, email me. We're happy to do some of that legwork for you as well, so you can make sure you get connected.
Thank
Can
you
I
so
add
much,
to that,
Denise.
Denise?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think one of the best things to do would be to, as you get to know the community action people, is to get really involved in the community needs assessment
Mm.
and to make sure that the families using your services um, are part of the survey and the focus group and maybe even the
Yes.
interviews that go into that. What that will do is that will give their needs and their concerns, it will actually get that into the decision making system that community action agencies use to fund emerging needs. And so getting involved in that is probably really critical in terms of not just partnering for referrals, but partnering for an opportunity to have shared funding uh, to get new initiatives up and running.
Thanks, Jason. And there's another question that your response actually made me think of just, this answer. So there's a question from Ryan in Iowa around um, how do we avoid duplication of services and how some of the feedback they're working on developing more FRCs in Iowa, and they've received some feedback around some pushback actually around, if community action agencies are already doing this, then, how are we not reinventing the wheel? And I think, what Jason was just saying around those community needs assessments and really focusing on how they can complement each other. I was thinking too about how Jason was talking about sometimes the FRCs may have there's more room for who you're serving and how you're serving them, as far as not having the restraints around um, income guidelines and such. So just seeing how they're complementary. But curious if you all want to weigh in too, what you've seen in action in your communities, and of course Denise as well. Any other thoughts to add there?
I think Jason's comments about the needs assessment are critical, and there's too few resources to duplicate. But different groups sometimes can get into different communities. It sounds like FRCs are very school district heavy, right? So that is a unique opportunity. What are those gaps that need to be filled, and where can those partnerships come into play? But that needs assessment really tries to help community action agencies trying to find ways where we're not duplicating, that we're able to leverage resources in different ways. But Jason and Daniela, you likely have a better response.
I think that pretty much covered it. We do a lot of, we go to a lot of networking events with we're very involved with our public school system here in Seattle Public School System, as well as different cities. So we are very well aware of all the various nonprofits, the resource centers, the schools, and what they do, as well as what services we provide. So in constant communication, I'm constantly receiving calls from various nonprofits on a daily basis as to if we could help this family, and then vice versa, we call. So I think specifically for us is the language. So most of our staff are Spanish speaking, as well as we do have a large Chinese community. So we have Cantonese and Mandarin speaking staff. So that is something, particular about our agency, that we're able to assist that certain community.
Right. Thanks, Daniela. And looking where we are on time, I know there's some questions we didn't have a chance to get to. So Denise, Daniela, Jason, or myself will respond to those individually. So thank you so much for those questions. And if you have any more, feel free to put them in the Q&A and we'll get back to you individually. And thank you all so much for being here. I want to share a couple of resources that may even answer some of the questions that you had. So just going to walk through a couple of resources that are available to you. Appreciate Denise putting the link to their website in the chat so you can access that to access more resources. There's tons of resources on the NFSN website around FRCs and other resources where you can learn more about networks. We have a hub where you can, anybody can access it. It's free. It's an FRC learning hub. So this is geared towards folks that are starting new family resource centers or wanting to, kind of dot the I's and cross the T's of their current FRC. So there's like sample job descriptions and things like that that are helpful for both the systems level folks wanting to start FRCs and independent FRCs. So encourage you to check that resource out. And of course, want to mention some upcoming webinar Wednesdays. We have a vast library on the website that you can learn more about different aspects of FRCs, different FRCs in unique settings, networks, more about the standards, parent leadership development, and advancing our family support field as a whole. This one's actually just coming up next week, which will take a much deeper dive into FRCs and FRC networks. There are different services available as well, different training and technical assistance. And I'm going through these quickly because of time, but these slides will be available on the NFSN website by this time tomorrow, as well as the recording and all of the handouts. So one of the ways that we at the NFSN advance the quality work with families is through the standard certification training. And so encourage you to check this out. It's a great training and it's all done virtually, so you can join from anywhere. This one, there's a question about parent advisory committees that we didn't quite have time to answer. And so wanted to share for those of you that are interested in developing a new parent advisory committee or strengthening an existing one, this training is a great way to do that. And quickly, the Together for Families conference is, it's going to be here before we know it. We are co-hosting this with the Center for the Study of Social Policy, Families Canada, and our counterpart from Ireland, the Ireland Family Resource Center Network. So really excited for this. Registration is not quite open yet, but save the date for now. And this is for both folks that are at the program level as well at the network level, community action agencies. We know you'd find it very helpful for your work as well. And other training offerings coming up. So more down the pike. So stay tuned. And there's my contact information, just so we have everybody's contact information on the various slides. And just want to say thank you all so very much for joining us for today's webinar. And a huge thank you to our presenters today. Denise for sharing about your organization, and Jason and Daniela for sharing about your wonderful programs in your communities. So for those of you that joined today, just as a reminder, an evaluation will appear on your screen when you exit the webinar today. We do appreciate you taking the time to complete that as the evaluation. It does really help us plan for future webinars, and we hope you have a lovely rest of your Wednesday. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.